Hey there, I'm Dominic St-Pierre, and you're listening to Go Podcast. Today, I talk with Marian Montagnino about CLI and Go and other technology. I'd like to take some time to apologize. There were some internet glitches when we recorded, so you will obviously not hear them because we are locally recording on each of our side, but we had lots of lags and lots of cuts during our conversation, so it was challenging. So hopefully it's not a distraction too much, but I wanted to apologize about that beforehand. Hello, Gophers! So I have a guest this week. I am with Marian Montagnino. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation, Marian.
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So before we start, because I usually ask guests to give some kind of description of themselves. So I researched you this morning, and I was like, wow, there's a couple of things that I need to ask you first. First of all, as a blind person, thank you very much to have said what you said in one of your video for the DeLorean in Back to the Future. I was not aware that it had a I don't know how to say that, but the word in the plate, I guess. So I was not aware of that. So thank you for that.
Oh, out of time.
Yeah, exactly. I watched your presentation, your Go conference this morning, because yes, I kind of like to get myself some background information on the people that comes to this podcast. But yes, that was something I wanted to mention. And the second one is what is I think it's intramural ice hockey you have in your LinkedIn page. I'm very curious about that.
Oh, intramural ice hockey. Yeah, I was in college when I was playing D-League ice hockey, and I actually started when I was younger. I was actually pigeon-toed when I was born, and one of the things that the doctor had recommended was that I get into roller skating. So I started with that. I ended up into rollerblading. And then when I was in college, I was rollerblading around campus. And my friend at the time saw me and was like, oh, like, do you want to play roller hockey? And I was like, sure, like, I'll play. Like, I don't know how. And then she's like, it's easy. And she showed me. And then from there, I had a boyfriend that was part of the D-League ice hockey team, and I had already played, like I already knew how to ice skate. So that led into D-League ice hockey, and I played for about 3 years in college. So yeah, and ice hockey being like in upstate New York, there were a lot of people from Canada that went to my school, and ice hockey was a big part of the culture. So during the season, every Friday, we'd all go and watch the games.
Okay, very cool,
Yeah.
very cool. So all right, so that was my curiosity about your two things. I wanted to say that first. So yeah, if you can, I don't know, give us some background about you. One thing that I will completely admit that I found very interesting is the path that you had from the television or the broadcast company that you were. I mean, that was fascinating to me. So I mean, I will let you talk a little bit, but if you can introduce yourself, we will go from there.
Sure. Well, my interest in technology started when I was younger, when I first got the computer, and we can go into that later, but it led me to going to college for a degree in computer engineering. Electrical was a bit hard. I switched to computer science. But then after graduation, some of the first jobs that I got were mostly in support roles. I don't know if it was because they thought I was good at communication, so it's a good kind of role to be in if you can communicate between the programmers and the sales and the managers or management teams. So I did support for a while with like minimal like development right out of college, and then I always wanted to do more, but I eventually ended up getting into management, and I enjoyed it in the fact that I could work with a team of developers, and specifically at Participant Media as a broadcast technology manager. One of the things that I was doing there was leading a team to develop the Over the Top app, which basically is a mobile, like an app for mobile or tablet, where, or even desktop, where people could log in and then view the TV being streamed, the TV channel. And that was great, but I also felt like I was missing something. I really wanted to do more of the building and not just managing the development of this app
Hmm.
for Pivot TV at the time. So that was actually the year that I taught myself Go programming, and I was taking some side jobs along with working full time at Pivot, including um, a startup with Matt Ryer and Natalie Pistinovich, who I don't know if you know. You might know them
Oh,
personally. They've done a
is
lot of
she the one
podcasts.
yeah, is she the one that co-hosts the Go Time?
Yes, and she also started
Oh, nice,
GopherCon EU. Yeah.
nice,
So
nice.
I ended up doing a hackathon with the startup, and then I ended up working there full time. I switched because Pivot TV shut down, and it was just a good transition since I was already getting really into Go development. So I worked with them, and then that led me down this path that I'm in currently.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, this is very interesting. So, and you while that time you wrote a book on CLI, and you gave a couple of talk at Go conferences.
Yes, now the book came out more recently because it was about just a little over a year old. Um, but about 2 years ago, that's when I started writing the book. Yeah, the book um, was released in March of last year, and it was in CLIs. And part of the reason why I got into it is because of some of my earlier experiences with computers. And when I was younger, I really got into, command line interfaces and CLI tools. And my earlier experiences were on BBSs. So that was almost entirely text-based, if not like ANSI when playing games. So
Yeah,
it
the
was,
good old time I would call that.
yeah,
For
yeah,
me
it
at
was,
least. For me at least.
I know.
I'm a huge fan of obviously I'm a huge fan of anything text based. Uh, so yeah, it's not a secret. I'm a blind person, so I mean, as soon as we are talking like 2D stuff, and what I mean by 2D, I mean, you know, CLI for me is kind of 2D compared to a graphical user interface in a sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really glad to hear that there's a lot of people still that prefers CLI. One thing that impressed me was that
Um,
you said somewhere that you read the entire MS DOS guide at some point. This is crazy. I mean, wow.
oh no. I mean, the first computer that we got was Windows and MS-DOS based. So I was just really fascinated by the computer, and part of that was learning. So I would just go through and learn about all the different commands and how to like CD and make directories. But it also helped me learn how to navigate if I was dialing into a server, you know, a support server
Yeah.
and looking for files. I think a lot of people that are in tech when they were younger maybe not all, were like kind of fascinated with hacking. And so
Oh yeah, absolutely.
part of that was
So
like,
you would say
learning
that
about,
it's probably that. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we have some lag here.
yeah, there's a bit of a
So
lag.
would
I
you?
missed what you said.
Yeah. Would you say that this is what drove you to computer science?
Yeah, getting the first computer when I was 12, it was interesting because my dad only wanted me to use it for school reports. But then he would find me on the computer like in the wee early hours, just like dialing into BBSs and, just learning more about it. So, and then it got into like me wanting to take it apart and upgrade it. And yeah, and then I didn't know that computer science was even an option in school, but one of the people that I met on the BBS that I dialed into, which was one of the first ones was Totsi, which is Temple of the Screaming Electron, but then I ended up dialing into a more local one called Realm of Mirage, which I'm still friends with um, the person who was running it. Like it was started by her father, but I met people through that BBS, some of them like hackers, and they're in technology today, but they were the ones that said, oh, if you're interested in this, like maybe consider software engineering. I was like, what's software engineering? And they sent me like a PDF of, how to learn C coding. And that was when I was like 17 or 16. And I was really interested in that. So that's why I ended up going to school for computer science. I was just
Nice.
lucky
Yeah.
enough to have a computer at, 12 and be able to find a local BBS randomly and then meet people that could guide
Oh yeah.
me towards a degree that I didn't even know existed because my family wasn't into technology.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that a lot. It was the same for me as well. So we at some point we had this Apple II when it it's in the mid '80s, and the problem was I was very young at that stage. But the point is I know that I would like to return there, but there was just no help. There was my parents could not help me at all. They were not even able to read in English. Like I was saying before we start recording, we speak French in Quebec. So I mean, all the manual, all the help was in English. So finding people to help younger, I would say, engineers to become in the 80s and 90s was kind of very hard because there were no internet and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, there was internet in the 80s and 90s. It's basically how I found my friendship group, outside of school. Are you still there, by the way? There is a bit of a lag.
Oh yeah,
You can still hear,
yeah.
okay, yeah. Um, yeah, I went to a private school actually, and I didn't I didn't really know many people that were into technology except through meeting them through the BBS. And what was kind of neat was that a lot of them ended up in technology roles, whether or not it was like software engineering, it could be like getting into security type roles, um, like a CSO role, or people that are working as like IT managers today. But we were all, kids just exploring the internet back then. It was nice to meet people who were a little bit older who could guide me too.
Right. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So let's jump back to CLI for a moment. So I was intrigued to hear you talk a little bit about for me yeah, it's not a secret. I will always choose a CLI over any GUI. But it still needs to be done right. And one thing that I we all know that it's pretty hard to name things, and So I was wondering if you had some tips or if you have anything to say at all about how to properly think about how to structure, the either the commands or the argument or the flags that the CLI is going to be offering.
Yeah, I think you just want to make it as intuitive as possible. And part of that is looking at some of the most popular CLIs in use today. And you could see, like, if someone studied all of these CLIs, like what are the um, common commands that are used for certain things. If you're doing something similar, go with you know, what that command name would be most likely with a more popular CLI. Also, I find interesting and kind of cool that is the AWS CLI uses a lot of like the Linux commands. So they'll include like ls in there as short for list. So that's, very intuitive for people who are working in Linux or Unix, for example. So they would include not just, very common intuitive names for these commands and flags that are most often used, but also integrating in, the Unix or Linux commands into the CLI wherever possible.
Right. When you are building a CLI, so what do you do in fact in terms of how do you decide which will be your? And I'm not talking about flags. I mean for a little bit bigger CLI, and if we take Docker for instance, so we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of we had a lot of sub part and things like that. So I mean, do you find yourself finding those things early on the development, or it's something that came to you at some point and you said, oh, you know what, I changed my mind, this should be name X instead of Y, for example.
Um, I mean, it's good to think about it early on. Like, I like to think about not just, the commands or the flag names, but even behind the scenes, like what is the name of the function or the variable? And it all kind of ties together. You want to make things not only easier for other people, but easier for yourself. I typically don't end up looking back and thinking, like, oh, I should have named it something different. But I can understand if that could happen, especially for someone who's just getting into programming and just trying to figure out, how they should be naming things. But you want to name your commands and flags and variables just something that makes sense, like when you put it all together so that it reads like a sentence. Especially with code, if you're interjecting a function into a piece of code, if you can read the code like you're reading a paragraph or you're reading something, like it would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Is it part of what you are doing at Netflix? Are you doing a lot of CLI, command line tools, maybe internal things? I mean, why have you created so many content around CLI yourself?
Mostly it was an interest of mine. And also, I love Go. So
Yeah.
I was reached out to by Pact, and they had a couple options for, you know, book subjects, and CLI was just one of them. And so for me, that was just the most interesting one that I wanted to get into. As for the work in Netflix, I have written some agents that are running on the artist workstations, and they do have a CLI component to them. It's nothing like fancy. I was initially hired actually to write these Go agents that are running on the artist workstations globally around the world, on either physical machines or on AWS instances. But then, once those have been developed, they're currently just in mostly like maintenance. So if there's a bug that's found or something that needs to change on the workstation and then the agent needs to change, then I'll do that. But there's not too much work that has to be done, like once it's developed. So I'm actually working and developing in other languages at Netflix. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
is it also CLI or it's something else completely?
it's
That,
something else. I'm actually developing um, backend services in Java. And I am currently really enjoying developing a new UI for the artists that want to connect to their remote workstations.
nice.
And that's in React and TypeScript. The backend is a Java DGS, domain graph service. The reason why it's written in Java and not Go is because Java is the paved path for Netflix. So I got really lucky that they thought that they needed some agents written in Go, and I applied, and it was perfect because I could just, start working there and write these agents in Go. But it's not a Go is not used extensively at Netflix because it's not the
Right.
paved path. But they do have some internal CLI tools, and some of them are written in Go.
Nice.
But they're developed on other teams and not mine, unfortunately.
Ju- just between you and me, is it hard to go from Go to Java sometime? Just between us.
It was interesting because actually I had an internship at Xerox when I was a sophomore in college, and that internship was all in Java. And so that was the last time that I coded in Java before restarting about 4 years ago. And Java has changed a lot in good ways. The thing that's kind of difficult about Java is I feel like I'm going backwards when I go from Go to Java in terms of how the code is written. For example, in Go, you don't write an interface unless, you're going to be, there's like a purpose behind that interface because
Yeah.
there's multiple things that are going to be, passed in and connecting to it. But in Java, it's almost like you write an interface by default. With Go,
Oh,
it's like, it's not the case. You write interfaces
yeah.
by default. So the engineering aspect of it is different. I still look at Go and I feel that Go is my favorite language because when I write code, it just looks so clean and simple. And yeah, it's just a different way, of structuring the code. The syntax is different, but, I love working with other languages because there's still that underlying similarity between all of them in logic.
Yeah. What about have you built any web application in Go so far? Have you done any cloud development other than CLI?
Oh yeah, I've not like not like I was working at a company and developed, a web app from scratch, but it's kind of how I got started when I was working at Participant is, building stuff for production that could help automate things. And then the startup that I was working with, Matt and Natalie, we ended up, there was a UI. The UI development was done by other engineers, but we were writing, the HTTP service side. So there were endpoints writing like the endpoints and then the handlers. So I've done that as well.
Great.
Not
Did
just at the
Matt
startup, but
Did Matt
different.
forces you to do a TD at all
Yes,
cost for?
we did. He didn't force us, but it was definitely, since he was the architect, he, was amazing to work with because I felt like I learned so much just being in that space with him, seeing like how things were developed, and it was it was a great opportunity, but it was also inspiring to work with Matt and Natalie for, with everything that they've done. He has also written plenty of books, and Natalie started Go for Con that year that we were working together. So,
Yeah, yeah, you are very lucky, to be frank. I mean, I'm sure there's a
yeah.
couple of gophers that listen that says, well, yeah, I can imagine that it could be nice to work with them for sure.
Oh, yeah. It was great and inspiring. And I think it led me down the road because even though I already was starting to get into Go and I was really excited about it, for that to be my first place to work, it really kind of helped continue that, feeling of just being so blessed and happy to be getting into Go and to be surrounded with such amazing engineers.
Great. So is there anything in Go that you are missing from Java? What about all the data manipulation, for example, connecting to database and um, I know that if Java is anything like C sharp, there's certainly a couple of predefined ways to model databases and things like that. I mean, it's still interesting in Go how much it is verbose, but I still like it. Don't get me wrong.
It is,
But
yeah.
is it something that you're missing?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I don't really think about it too much because a lot of the Go development that I was dealing with at Netflix was like these agents that were very simple. I wasn't um, doing a lot of data manipulation with these agents that are running on the workstations. If I was, then I probably would miss it. That's why I like to say, I mean, I love all these different languages, and I like to think that like if you are gonna do something with a lot of data manipulation, that, Java would be a lot easier to, build with, then I'd say like go with that. It is, you're right. It's a lot easier dealing with like databases and data manipulation in Java. It's pretty amazing how quickly you can transform like a list or Java into some other type with the
Yeah,
way they handles like mapping and filtering and all of that. But for
yeah. If
every, and go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
just thinking, like, for every different thing that you build, I feel like there's a different tool that would be good for it. Like front end development, I would still, it's interesting because there's certain frameworks in Go I've heard, and I haven't really done that much with them, that allow you to build, UI with them. And I would love to play around with that and see, but I'm maybe so used to React that I would just default use React and TypeScript for a UI.
Yeah,
Um, so different tools for solving different problems, basically.
sure. Yeah, I think React is all fine. TypeScript is nice at some point, sometimes. What my biggest, you know, the thing that I dislike about this ecosystem is like when you're returning to an old project, let's say it's 2 years after, and you're trying to build it, your build system is always broken. It's less and less true though with ES build and things like that. But I mean, the front end always was for me this 2 or 3 days at some point where everything is broken and you still need to fight your build system and things like that, the dependencies and whatnot. I mean that to me feels really bad. So that's why I was really really enjoying Elm at some point. Unfortunately, it never really took off. But to me, Elm was wow, it was so beautiful and so easy to just have. I wrote a blog post. I think it was like in 2017 and or whatnot. That like I was saying something like, all Go developers should try Elm because it's so similar in some point. And I'm not talking about the programming paradigm because it's a functional programming language, but the tooling, the fact that everything is there, the dependencies are extremely solid. To me, it just made no sense that Go developers that do front end development were not at least testing Elm.
Oh, okay. Well, that inspires me to actually want to check it out and play around with it. I have heard good things about Elm. Now, when you
Yeah,
say that, um, the way that you talk about it, though, it seems like, is it no longer being improved upon? Like, is it still out
yeah,
there in use? Is it just not very popular or?
yeah. That's the thing. So it never really took. It always was only a small amount of people, but I think from probably the last 4 years, it's not really maintained anymore. And I mean, there's I would not you know you would not use your time well. I think to try it these days. But yeah, that's very sad because to me it was really the right answer to the problem of all the front end problems that npm and Node and JavaScript is bringing to the table. So to me, it was very clear, but there's only like 10,000 people that was thinking like me or something like that. So
Yeah.
it always was a very very small language. The problem is also that front end people. I showed that at some point. I was I, w- I was owning a startup in 2016, and we had one front end developers, and when he saw the functional programming, you know, it was not clicking with them. So so that might be a problem as well for Elm, in my opinion, is that it seems to be targeting as a more I don't know how to phrase that correctly, but let's just say that people that are doing only React and JavaScript in their career might be extremely repulsed by Elm.
Okay. Well, it's so funny how, um, I mean, I know what you're talking about when people get used to developing in a certain way, but I think that maybe a large majority would be, you know, repulsed by it, but it definitely takes an open mind. What you find is that there's some people out there that like to do things like how they've always done them and, something that takes them away from their comfort zone can be repulsive, but it's, I don't know, like, I think it's good to stay open-minded and to try out, different things in the way you're developing. And like you're saying, like, if you liked Elm, having that different mindset helped you to, you know, develop with something that makes UI a lot simpler and dependency management a lot simpler and cleaner. So just you talking about it makes me want to try it out.
I don't know. I mean, I'm extremely passionate about that because for me it all starts with, is the language going to provide me with a good tooling, and this is also why I am not as into Erlang because I tried it. I'm one of those that would like Erlang as a language. I have no problem with the syntax and whatnot, but the tooling is not working. A little bit same for Elixir. So, but Elm is just like Go. Go. When I discovered Go, I started writing Go almost at the same time as you in 2014, and it I'm coming from a .NET background. I did some node development after that, but once I tried Go, I I I really found what I like in my developers day to day, and for me it started with the tooling. What is the experience I have from the language, from the command line point of view? The compiler, is it going to help me? And I'm mostly talking about a blind person here, so I might be biased towards some things that normal sighted people don't have. But for me, I mean, the Elm compiler is just it was a copilot way before GitHub Copilot existed. To be frank, Elm is a beautiful piece of software, of language. This is yeah, I'm still very fond of it, but yeah, unfortunately it did not work.
Yeah. So it's not being supported anymore?
Well, there was basically a one person, a little bit like Python, a dictator for life, a benevolent dictator for life. So and so yeah, there was some kind of drama around people wanting to contribute, and the author of the language not really wanting to accept things and things like that. You wanted to move very slow, which I really like. So that is something that I have against Go at this point. Is I'm I'm not particularly liking the fact that they are releasing twice a year or whatever. I mean, we don't need to go as fast. We don't need to always add new feature to a language. In my opinion, I really enjoy stability, and it's nice to have some new things here and there at some point. But it I don't know. I mean, sometimes you are often hearing people saying that a package is not maintained because there hasn't been a commit since 1 year. I mean, it's not a problem. I don't see it as a
I
problem.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel the same way.
yeah,
I don't see it as a problem. Like, I don't think that you need to move fast, especially if, things are working well. Um, the thing is, you want to make sure that it has basically everything you need for what you want it to build. But once it has that, I think the only thing that might be important to do is that with new hardware, for example, like there might be some changes on the back end, but yeah, just anything in general new that people are starting to build, there might be some changes. I mean, it's interesting though that you say that because I think Java's still making changes today to their language. And some of the features that, for example, like existed in Go that didn't really have an easy way to do in Java, they're like currently doing that. So
yeah, yeah. This is explaining a little bit why I have those thoughts, because I'm coming from a huge .NET, very huge. My first 10 years were building line of business .NET application, and I have been bitten so many times by Microsoft. They were releasing something new. Oh, you know what? You will have a new frameworks to model your database, and 2 years, 3 years after that, it was gone. Oh, we are launching Silverlight, and you will be able to build. And what I did, I did some project in Silverlight, and 2 3 years after that, boom, it was gone. So I mean, at some point,
um,
I really enjoy stability.
oh yeah, yeah, me too. Also, like you don't want to have to keep updating your code, but I think it's
Yeah, but
to match the latest version of support and everything. But it's just the
oh
nature
yeah,
of technology, though. I feel like it's just always changing, and I feel like there was this one quote, I might have like put it on my Twitter, that some famous software engineer compared um, software development to like mowing a lawn. Like you always have to go in and um, make
Yes.
updates and clean it up and things like that. So,
Oh yeah, totally. Totally, but still, at some point, we are very lucky in Go that at least there's a 1.0 backward compatibility. This is nice. I recompiled a very old code base from 2017. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it was building as is. I was like, wow, this never would have happened in almost all of the other languages that I've written in so far.
no, exactly. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, just thinking of React and Node, and whenever there's an upgrade, I feel like it's a mess.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, with Go, it's really nice for that backwards compatibility, which is, I think, is in line with how, the clean code, just like clean upgrades. It's one of the reasons why I find it such a great language and why I love it.
Have you tried anything else to write command line or interface?
Uh, when I was teaching myself Go in 2014, I was simultaneously teaching myself Python. So I have done some CLI work with Python, nothing major though. Also, um, I mean, just back in the day, there was some development that I've done with like C++, but primarily it's been mostly Go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. One other thing, returning to Java, that just hit
Sure.
me, Java and .NET, is that the the cognitive load on a new developers is huge. I have trained a couple
Mhm.
of junior developers in my life, and what what they are feeling at first is that this gigantesque frameworks and all of those libraries that are part of, quote unquote, the core library of the language, if you will, but it's so huge. It's very helpful when you are mastering them, but as a junior developer, it always felt very intimidating for them. I sense, because they never knew. Oh, should I write that, or is that a function that exists for it's always interesting how junior developers are you know confronted to having to learn this entire thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I went to school for computer science, and did you graduate from a
Oh, I
university
have
in
a
as well?
no. I don't have a university degree. No, it's I have we have something in Quebec just before the university.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah,
I just feel like there's so many self-taught software engineers out there, and they're also just amazing. But for someone just starting out, I do feel that Go has a leg up because of its simplicity. That whenever I meet someone and they're like, "Oh, I'd really like to get into, programming," I recommend Go as the starting point, just because it's got like a smaller set of keywords and simple syntax that, once they feel like they master Go, then going to another language can be a bit of a jump, but they can also take, that the programming foundations that they developed while learning Go, like
yeah.
into that. But the structure of how you structure the code can be a little different. And like I was saying, with the interfaces in Java versus in Go, there's just certain differing coding standards within the different communities.
Yeah. What I'm seeing is might be that though. The only thing that Go have is some people are, you know, they are nervous about the lack of structure. So they it's a question that is returning again and again, and I don't understand. I genuinely do not understand why people, let's say someone is coming from Rails, for example, where there is a huge standard for how the things are structured, and a controller file goes here, and etc etc. So in Go, I really enjoy myself. It's a blank slate at the beginning, and you are building your own structure. It should not put that pressure on people, but I mean, it's a question that I keep seeing all the time.
Yeah, I feel like there's a specific psychological term for it. Like when you have so many choices, you feel overwhelmed. It's like information overload, or just people become overwhelmed just by the choice. Like freedom can be paralyzing for some, which is weird.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
why school having guidance in terms of like even how to learn gives people help. And I think it's just the fact that many people have different ways of learning, and some people can learn very well on their own and teach themselves coding if they have their own way of structuring it for themselves, but others need that structure of, a teacher guiding them, or, you know, showing them, step by step how to get something done. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, in my opinion, this is still two separate things. Being thrown directly on a new language that you don't know. I mean, and anyone would at least need some kind of guidance at first.
Yeah.
When I'm talking structure, I'm talking more about directory structure, packages, and whatnot. This seems to be blocking a lot of people that are coming from .NET, Java, Ruby on Rails, Django, Python and whatnot, where when you are writing a type of programs, the
Yeah.
the language, or at least the frameworks is creating some boilerplate for you, and so I mean, this is something to think a little bit about. Maybe there's something. There's a couple of templates already existing out there, but
Yes.
maybe it should be in the Go tooling directly. I don't know.
I don't know if it should be in the Go tooling directly, but at least for CLIs, what's really amazing and love about Cobra is that they have that CLI tool, Cobra CLI, that basically when you do Cobra init, it'll generate the scaffolding and the folder structure for your commands. So when you do, you know, Cobra, like, and then to add the command, it'll put it within the CMD folder. I think it's nice because it gives people the structure that they need. It gives them a jump start, and it's very logical in the way that it structures all of the commands. Now, structuring an web app written in Go is going to be different, but beyond that, I think um, there's different higher level structures that people can follow, and it can lead people into certain traps, common traps like stuttering. You know,
Right.
um, yeah, I know it can be difficult.
Oh
But
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm not minimizing the difficulties for
yeah,
sure. I'm just wondering if there's a way to help people that are switching, because it's a question that is returning every week, every day. This is kind of crazy. I'm curious to know if you find it strange that the standard library flag package does not handle the one letter with one dash and the words with two dash for parsing flags.
yeah, it's different in Go that, it doesn't care whether it's like a single or double dash. That's kind of unique about it. I also find it kind of nice though, because I feel like it trips people up. So if you remove that, um, I think you're more often, like your users are more often to get it right. If they put a single or a double dash, they'll have the same outcome. So just by
Right.
default.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. I hear you on that. Although, I mean, it's so standard in Linux and Unix and whatnot. I mean, this is to me, it's a little bit. I'm not sure I understand exactly why it's there, because the standard is for the majority of the tooling, and if you take the GNU Core Util, for example, they all have that format. So it I don't know, it to me it seems like something that it should be there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Now I haven't it's so you work primarily with like when with Linux and Unix. Do you do a lot with Windows as well? CLI?
I had to get back to Windows in 2 or 3 years ago, because now I'm using a screen reader full time. But the majority of my day, I am in the subsystem for Linux on Windows. Before that, I was running Linux all the way, but I cannot do that anymore, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
the accessibility is very very bad on Linux. I wanted to contribute to Orca, which is the screen reader, but to be frank, I'm not very good in C++. I think it's in C++. I don't really like this language, this environment, this ecosystem. It's not really for me. So yeah, I'm on Windows now.
Funny. That was the first language that I started learning when I was in college. My whole college they were training in C++. plus plus.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
But still.
I know I miss the language, and sometimes I think if I went back to it, because it's been so long since I've coded in C++ plus plus, that I would probably have difficulty with it. If you haven't done something in a while, and then hopefully you think maybe I wouldn't. It's like riding a bicycle, but I don't know.
Yeah.
As far as the flags go, and singular or double dash and the standards, I don't know if it's they've looked at all these different CLIs and they feel that that standard trips the majority of people up. I'm not sure what their thought process was behind
Well,
it.
Ken Thompson should have thought about that. He's the
Oh,
co-author of Unix, so I mean, so,
yes, yeah, that's
there
true.
there has to be a reason, but I'm not sure. So I also use Cobra most of the time. It's really really nice. I also enjoy it like you. So have you tried any other libraries to help you? I heard a lot of things about bubble tea and whatnot, but have you tried that?
I have played around a little bit with Charm Bubble Tea. It's so weird. I know it's so popular, and I feel like I should continue trying to play around with it and build something in it. So I think that's something that I'll spend some time, playing around with. But I first got into Term Dash. I don't know. Have you heard of Term Dash? It's another TUI
Yes.
framework for Go. I don't know what about it personally for me, I feel that the layout and building uh, like a terminal user interface just is so simple in Term Dash and intuitive. And even the way that you add styling to it is very similar, at least like coming from a front end experience. I feel like it was made for someone who has been doing CSS or, UI styling to then move into Term Dash. So I really liked it. I thought it was super simple to get started in. I didn't get that feeling from Charm Bubble Tea, which I think is a very unpopular opinion, but I could definitely play around with it and get more into it. So
Yeah, I
have you built anything with Charm and Bubble Tea?
well, unfortunately, they are not accessible. This is something that I
Yeah.
created an issue. Well, they were already an issue there. I commented, but I was supposed to try and see. But yeah, just like you as well. I don't know. I feel like for me it's Turnbox that I really really enjoy. I know that it's not really to build dashboard and whatnot. I think Term Dash is built on top of Turnbox if I'm not mistaken, but um,
It is.
remember having written a very dirty simulation game. We did a road trip. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and I was with my younger
Uh-huh.
kid. Because I'm not driving, obviously, so I was
Yeah.
building like a simulation game in Turnbox. It was pretty nice.
That is amazing. Also, I find it amazing that you are blind, but you're also coding, and it would be really interesting to hear about the tools that you use. Are there, so you have built with Termbox, and you're right that Term Dash is built on top of Termbox. And you've also played around with Charm Bubble Tea. So what is your comparison of them? Because I have mine. I do have a preference for Term Dash in the fact that I feel like it's more intuitive. But what do you
I
think?
haven't played much with Bubble Tea though because it's still unfortunately, yeah, it's not accessible. So to me it's very difficult. I was lucky enough
Hmm.
to still have enough vision to discover Turnbox and Term Dash back in the days. So today I'm not even sure that I would have an easy time to use them. But I believe it's just simpler with Term Dash, to be frank. But also there's not much there. There's a couple of UI. There's a couple of component, if you will. But I think Charm is building something. It's a little bit exhaustive, to be frank, but I mean it seems to be bigger in my from what I understand. But I lack the proper experience, to be frank, to really comment,
I see.
because
I've
that's a
seen some
challenge,
great
because like
things.
yeah.
Oh, I've seen some great
I
things
I
built
I
with
I,
Charm
I
and Bubble Tea.
Yeah, I think our lag is now extremely difficult to
It
to
is.
work with. I think we have
It
like
is. I
probably
don't
10
know
seconds
why.
different.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know. That's fine,
Yeah.
but I think I will we will need to end the call to that. But do you have any closing thoughts that you want, that maybe is anything that we haven't covered? Do you have any where people can find you? We will have all the links in the show notes, but if you have a closing thoughts, it's a good time.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and you can search for me by name. And I just wanted to say for anyone who's new to developing, like I highly recommend starting with Go. It's a very simple language to start and try writing a CLI. I think that's an easier step to start with before jumping into writing web services with Go, because you can really create something and do something quickly and simply with Go. So if anyone out there is going to go that route, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to answer any questions and all of that. But I really appreciate you, Dom, having me on the podcast. So I wanted to say thank you to you and thank you to all of the listeners today.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
All right, that's it for this week. I would really appreciate if you can talk or share about this podcast. It's always helpful. Also, another way to support this show is by purchasing my course. There's always a link in the show notes. So on that, see you next week.